Recording. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ravi Kumar. I'm the organizer of the Business Agility webinar series, which is being conducted by RX Agile. We are a Bangalore based company and providing training and consulting services in the area of business agility. So, this webinar series that is being organized has a particular intent, and the intent is to send a message that for an organization to be truly agile, it needs to have certain capabilities and capacities. So, at RX Agile, the model we have created for business agility, the model has six components, what we call it as practice areas, and these practice areas we call them as enablers of business agility, namely strategic management and leadership, lean and agile practices, technology and engineering practices, analytics and business intelligence, operational excellence and business performance, organizational development, and change management. For an organization to be truly agile, the capacities and capabilities needs to be developed in these six areas. And in this business agility webinar series, we are covering each of the area with a message that how each practice area contributes to business agility. So far, we have conducted three webinars in this series. In technology and engineering practices, we spoke about DevOps. In operational development and change management, we spoke about the role of robotics process automation. And in strategic management and leadership, we spoke about strategic agility. So, in today's webinar, we would be covering the analytics and business intelligence aspect, which is very, very important for an organization to make timely decisions. And today we have Mr. Arun Kumar, who is a machine learning expert, and he would be discussing how data science helps make better business decisions. So, anyways, I would be handing over the reins to him, but let me introduce our speaker today. Arun Kumar has 16 years of experience in marketing, training, consulting in the field of financial services and data science. He's a founder of Think AI, a portal which is under construction, and we are proud to be associated with Arun Kumar for developing several training interventions. He also manages a Facebook page that is called as Data Science Live. And if you are a data science enthusiast, I strongly recommend that you follow his Facebook page. He's a certified business analytics professional. He's certified in predictive analytics from IMPX. He has also done a certification in macroeconomics forecasting from IMFX, and he's certified in text analytics from OpenStax. He's ranked among top 12% in data science competition, the NNL earthquake prediction hosted by Kaggle. He holds a lot of experience at the back of his mind, and I'm sure that what he's going to discuss today will add value to the attendees in this session. So I will not take much of your time, a few pointers about the housekeeping for today. So the request is kindly keep yourself on mute. This does not mean that you cannot speak. Feel free to speak when you intend to get in touch with the speaker. Please keep your video off to conserve the bandwidth and to get rid of any distractions. As far as question and answers session are concerned, I will leave it to Arun to provide us guidelines if he would like to take up the question throughout the session or he wants to maintain a separate slot towards the end. So, with that note, let me hand over the session to Arun and I welcome all of you to this webinar. Now I'm making Arun as presenter and he will take forward from here. So, Arun, my request is please start sharing your screen and it will give me a message to accept your screen sharing request. Yeah. Arun, you are the presenter now. I think Arun, your screen sharing has not started yet. Could you please send a request again to be a presenter? Arun, looks like the screen sharing is not, I mean, those controls are not being passed on to you. So let me act as a proxy for you. Kindly unmute yourself and I will navigate the slide deck for you. Please unmute yourself and you can take it forward.
So, thanks, Ravi, for the nice introduction. I'll try to match up with the expectations. And very good evening to all the participants here. And let's begin with in the air we see lot of articles in the lot of Google searches, data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning. It's all coming up every day almost. So let's understand today how does it help our businesses. And data science is one of the tool, but getting it understood from the point of view of what benefits a business can take from it is the real success factor. So whatever material I'll be discussing, you may find it in the open source searches on the Google. But the missing link is how to relate it with the business problems. So today we'll be focusing more on business problem linking with the data science, not the hardcore coding part of the data science. Fine. So let's move on to the slide. Uh, so first, few understanding about data science. How what is the core structure of data science? So first thing, I would say that it is interdisciplinary. So why it is interdisciplinary? Because it is taking different domains together to solve a business problem. Fine. Let's say if you are working with some e-commerce company, so you have a knowledge of e-commerce, you have a little bit of statistics and then little bit of programming, making it all together compactly packed in data science. So remember one thing, that it is not a single disciplinary field or monodisciplinary field, but it is interdisciplinary. Fine. So it has a lot of methods, processes, algorithms and systems to get the insights from the structured and unstructured data. So data are basically of two types in the business field, structured and non-structured. Structured means like you have the reportings, you have Excel table, and you have Word document which is well organized. But in the real world, 90% or more than that even, data is unstructured. Fine. So getting insights out of it. Now, what is insight actually? Insight means you have certain information which you can use for the business purpose. Let's, for example, if you are driving a car, let's say to certain picnic spot, and there are three ways you have to choose from. Now, one way is which is very nice and perfect, and you can reach your destination in 15 minutes. Second is, you don't have good roads. It is a rough road, so probably you may miss out, but some adventurous people may like to go from that through that particular roadway. Now third is, which is, you don't have information about it. You haven't heard about that way, but you just got to know that this is the all this is third way through which we can go to the destination for picnic. Now, as a common sense, if you talk about which one way you will prefer, uh, it will be obviously the first one, which has a good road condition. And in some cases, if you want to have some adventure in the trip, then you may choose second, but you will never you will always you will always avoid the third route. So what is this actually? This is insight. So this information for each way helps in making a decision to whether to choose a particular roadway. Fine. So insight is basically that information which is meaningful, and you can really replicate it, rather you can use it in your decisions, business decisions. Next slide. Now, what is data science? And actually, it is basically mix of three skills primarily. As I said, that it is an interdisciplinary subject or domain. So you have to have these three facets together to be an expert in data science. First is the domain knowledge. So domain knowledge means in whichever industry you want to work or you are working, so you must have a knowledge about that industry where you want to apply data science or machine learning. Fine. I cannot, if I work for a banking industry, and if I want to apply data science in FMCG, it's very difficult until unless I get a proper knowledge, or at least some level of knowledge about how FMCG works. So domain knowledge is very important. So whatever work you are doing, you might not be using data science right now, but at least you know the domain knowledge of your work. Then your first part is almost there to start with data science. Now the second part, which is mathematical and statistical modeling. So whatever domain knowledge you have, the domain knowledge has to be converted into data, and that data can be analyzed through mathematical and statistical modeling. Now, don't have the impression that you have to be a very high grade mathematician to be a good mathematical modeler or statistical modeler. See, even people who are having really great scores in mathematics actually don't do good mathematical modeling. So mathematical modeling is quite different from having a high grade mathematical score in your academics. Even if you are average one, but you are still able to make good intuition about how to implement mathematical modeling. So it is entirely different thing, and you don't think yourself that, okay, if I'm not good at mathematics, I cannot do. No, of course you can do it, because mathematical modeling is never taught in any of the academic sessions from class first to even graduation or post graduation. So it is never learned in our academic course curriculum. So that can be learned, and that is not that hard and fast as we see mathematics as a subject. Now the third one is the programming. So whatever data you have, whatever domain knowledge you have, you connect these two through programming interface. So programming is not in the sense of that you are going to develop a certain softwares which requires very high level of programming skills, but it is quite an introductory level of programming knowledge you need. So combining these three skills together, you are closer to data science, and more you gain, more you are able to mix these three together, you become more proficient data scientist. So those who are from IT backgrounds, they are they are good at programming, but they need to gain domain knowledge and mathematical modeling skills. Those who are from mathematical or scientific background, they might be having certain domain knowledge but may be lacking in programming, so they have to leverage the programming skills. And those who are MBAs, like management graduates, they are very good at domain knowledge, fine, but they might not be having good understanding of programming or little bit understanding of statistical modeling. So in a way, you can have one, and you can learn one or two, and then make your data science skill set complete. Fine. So this is how the data science works. Next slide. Fine. Now, in the initial sentences, I talked about that this is the data science is in the air now, and every channel is talking about, every search you will find advertisements of this course or that course, and some news of AI or some news of new architecture of AI is coming every day. So why it is happening so quickly now? What is the reason? So there are four reasons basically. One is the data generation speed. The data generation speed has tremendously scaled up, and it is, I mean, super exponentially growing in recent years, after unfolding of 4G, and then 5G is just around the corner and it will be implemented soon. So data generation speed has become really very fast. So every day we are generating a lot of data. Then data storage capacity also built up simultaneously. If you remember year 2000 or nearby years, we used to have floppy, compact disk or such kind of stuff. But these days, even your, a small USB card, that is memory card, you have 4 GB, 10 GB or 40 GB data. Fine. Then you have internet speed. So internet speed is just really driving the phenomena all across of generating the data, setting the digital impressions of the people on the cloud, and informations are being transmitted across the terminals like anything. I mean, these are super duper highways of information we are witnessing just because of internet speed and cloud. Now, data processing speeds. See, you have a lot of data, you have a lot of storage space and a lot of internet speed, but what about processing this data? So, in recent times, the processing speed of the data, I mean, in per second, how many femtobytes or how many picobytes, how many zettabyte of data you can process, that is actually the data processing speed. So that is also, chasing the data generation capacities. So that is also increasing, and now this kind of high speed high speed data analysis structures or hardwares or capacities rather, are now available to common people also like us. Fine. Previously it was to the very big corporations like IBM or Microsoft or other big companies who want to have a high volume data processing, but now it is available to common person, a common man, with very minimal cost. And in some cases it is freely available also, because in this domain the competition is rising among the players like IBM, Google, and everybody is participating in this competition, and they are really offering, I mean, great speed, data processing speed at very rock bottom prices. So these are the four, and let's see how these things are having a chronicles across. So in the next slide we'll see it. Now like internet user generates about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data each day. So that's the huge amount of data, but still, every day you people who are having, geo phone services might crib about that. Okay, our 2 GB is now exhausted so early. So that's the, kind of data generation speed is catching up. So 2.5 quintillion, and now it's going to be, I mean, you know, in 2020 there will be around 40 trillion gigabytes of the data. So that is 40 zettabytes. So this much of data is going to be generated in 2020. That is what we are right now. 90% of all data, that is the sentence you just attend to. 90% of all data in the world has been created in the last 2 years only. And this line is actually published in 2017. So you can connect it with that from 2015 to 2017. Whatever data is generated in the world is 90% of the data. So that's a huge amount of data we are generating now every day, every year, yeah, now. Today, it would take a person approximately 181 million years to download all the data from the internet. So if today a person wants to download all the data from the internet, it is going to be 181 million years to download all that data. So such a humongous data we are having right now around us. Now, if you look at this graph on the right top, the data storage supply and demand worldwide from 2009 to 2020, it has, you know, grown really exponentially, but the supply side is trying to catch up every time, but it shortfalls. So that's the huge, data storage capacity we are building up, but the data generation capacity is increasing much more than that. So that's one point. And the internet speed in India from 2017 to 2007 to 17, we can see again here the phenomena is in the exponential terms. So, and it will keep rising after even 5G. It is around the corner. I think 2021 or 22, the 5G will be there. Now similar position is here with the, you know, microprocessing data, that is data processing speed. It is also increasing. So in last couple of years, 4-5 years, the data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and deep learning, all these terms have gained footage in the various media, and these are the reasons why it is driving so high. So let's go to the next. So let's look at the data science trends which are going to be useful for us, uh, and we can see our employment opportunities, how we can leverage, and how we can have the prospects about our data science jobs. So IBM predicts that in 2020 there will be 20% increase in the data science jobs. So why it is so? Because suddenly the work from home and all these things are coming. You know, the business is bound to be going on the digital front. So those businesses which were not thinking of digitalization, now they will be forced to go for digitalization. So because of that, there will be 20%, 28% increase in the data scientist jobs in 2020. Then this demand will be astonishing. Around for 2020 only 7 lakh openings of data scientists. Now Glassdoor, which is well known job aggregator, so it on its billboard, it is the data scientist is the #1 job on its website. So that is the #1 job right now on the Glassdoor job listing positions. Fine. So that's the that's, you can see the scale of this profile. Now it's also analyzed that data science openings are open for 45 days. This figure is 5 days more than once in a regular job market. So what is the meaning? What is the meaning of this sentence is that other job openings are being filled up, but the data scientist job is filled up 5 days. More than 5 days more than the usual jobs fill ups. So what is the meaning of this fact, that the data science demand is rising, but the supply is not that sufficiently catching up with the demand. So that's why these job openings are listed open and keep open 5 days more in comparison to other jobs. Then we have 11.5 million jobs will be created by 2026 according to US Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this is the kind of scope we are having for the data science trends. And let's see. Now we are going to see how the data science job actually takes onto the business problems. Fine. So please. So today we'll be having a very brief case study. This is about launching of a new car model. So there is a company that is Marizo Uno Motors company, and let's say you are leading a product development team. I mean, if you are not, you have here Mr. Subruto. So you just keep yourself on his position, and they are thinking of planning a new car launch this year. So the team has defined following problem statements. So these are the problem statements on which team is actually brainstorming. Which car segment is most competitive? Before launching any car, you must know the competition. So wherever in which segment, there are various segments like entry level cars. Then you have sedan cars, hatchback cars. Then you have a premium cars, sports utility vehicle, luxury vehicles. So what is the competition in the segment where they want to launch? So they want to identify which segment is most competitive. Second is which segment is least competitive, where there are very few players touching in that particular segment. Now the C is what is the outlook of cars with manual transmission versus automatic transmission. So you might be knowing about this, that cars are now coming in two types of transmissions, automatic and manual. So automatic transmission means you don't need to pull up the gears. You don't have a gear bar to change the gears. The car automatically changes the gears as you do the reduce the speed or increase the speed. But the manual transmission, you have a gear handle, and you change the gear manually as per your requirement. Fine. So in premium segment cars, which cars are the nearest competitors? They want to know if there is a premium segment car. So what is the competition level there? And in sports segment cars, which cars are the nearest competitors? So they might be thinking that let's launch a sports car and let's understand this segment and what is the nearest competitor to it so that we can map the features of the car which they want to launch for this particular segment. Fine. So I'm sharing the approach that how it is going to be dealt in data science. First, we have to identify the problem statement. So we have already identified the statements that we want the competitions across the segments. We want to evaluate automatic transmission versus manual transmission. Then we need to have a data first. So data collection is very important exercise in data science, and without data, data science doesn't work. So for your problem statements, you must have appropriate good amount of data so that you can apply data science. Then no data is really actually captured for applying in the machine learning or data science algorithms. So you need to prepare the data so that your machine gets it, your algorithms get it in a right way. See, it is kind of an example like you have your in the kitchen you have a lot of food materials, fine, but can you directly put those things into the cooking? No, you have to wash those things, you have to really filter out those things. If you need to do some sort of pre-sorting of the vegetables, you do it, and then you finally put it into the cooking. So this data preparation is such an exercise where it prepares the data for machine learning application or data science application. Then we have data manipulation. I think this arrow should connect to data manipulation. It's wrongly connected here. The data manipulation means sometimes you need to really create new sort of data. Fine. So you manipulate the variables in a way that you get the desired data that really helps in model building. Then selection of model or algorithm. Now, according to data, according to your business problem, you have, array of algorithms to choose from. So there are around 15 to 20 popular algorithms of data science. So you just match which algorithm you should take up first to analyze your data. So there you have the selection procedure for that particular algorithm. After selection of algorithm, you do the model building. So model building is what actually, now you want your problem statement into the quantized manner, and whatever data you have in quantized manner, and now you are trying to build some relationships, and that is of quantitative nature. And once you get a good quantitative model, then your model building becomes complete, but you need to test it. So model evaluation is the next step, that whether your model has really good worked very well, or is it really worth giving the risk of taking decision on the basis of this model. So on that aspect, model evaluation is done so that we understand where model is making error, how much error it is making, and if that error is acceptable or lower than acceptable level, then model is taken. Otherwise, model improvement is uh, you know uh, taken into consideration, and you keep doing it until you get your model evaluation perfect to the level of error you can tolerate or accept. I'm telling error again and again because every model makes an error. You cannot have any model which is error free, but you can reduce it as much as possible, but you cannot eliminate it from the radar. Models will make an error, but you try to reduce it through repetitive optimization of the parameters of the model, and then you get the least error making model, which is you put it into the operations. Now output interpretation. Now whatever output it gives, you try to take the interpretation out of it, and then finally you take the business decision based on that. So I'll just make the corrections of these workflow. It's wrongly done here. Fine, so let's begin with the case study. Next slide. Yeah. These are the platforms, these are the programming platforms on which you can do the data science problem, working on the solving those problems through programming and mathematical modeling. So some of them are really free, open source, some are not. So like this Python sign you have, that is free, open source. TensorFlow is open source. RStudio is open source. SPSS is not open source. SAS is not open source. I think RapidMiner is also not open source. So I'll be, there are, you will find the discussions on the net that which one is better platform. It depends on your, your inclination, your organization's preferences. But there are always in, in competitive era, you always have a 2-3 players which are dominating the market. So previously it was SAS and SPSS, because data science was not that much popular, and big financial corporations or big corporation used to do this data science kind of thing. So SAS and SPSS were the dominating players, but now Python and R are the open source platforms that are being used very often. Very rigorously by the startups, by the middle level companies, and even bigger companies. Big corporations are also imbibing these tools because they are free, and not free for corporates, but for you it is free. Fine. So you can use it, you can practice it without any cost, and then you can finally apply in the companies where Python and R or TensorFlow, whichever is being used, you can apply there. So next slide. So let's solve the case study. Now I think I need to go to my sharing so that I can showcase how to take the decision of car launch of a car. So
Yep, I hope you should be able to share your screen.
Okay, fine.
So, okay, Arun, just a quick guidance.
Yeah.
There are simple steps. First, click the stop sharing. Sorry, first click the, let me stop my screen sharing. Now click your start sharing button. Then a small pop-up will appear where you will see a screen icon. Just click that and
Mhm.
ask me a screen sharing request. I'll do that.
Okay, my entire screen.
Yep, entire screen.
Okay, so now it's shared.
Let's see. Yeah, you are the presenter now and we are able to see your screen. Please take it
Okay,
forward from here. Thank you.
okay. Yeah. Thank you. So let me show you the document which we are going to work on, and I'm telling you the output first, so that you get to know what kind of a report will be generated to show your uh, employer or management guys. So so this is basically a HTML document, and this will be prepared in the entire process, and that can be shared with your I mean, let's say you are the production manager in that company and you want to share your report. So our functionality, our studio I'm going to use, and it prepares very nice reports. uh, After your all analysis, you can just click and share whatever findings you have, whatever reports you have. So launch of a new car model, that is our project, and the business problems which we are going to solve are here. Which car segment is most competitive? Which car segment is least competitive? What is the outlook of manual transmission versus automatic transmission? In premium segment cars, which are the nearest competitors, and sports car segments, which are the nearest competitors. So this is the document. This is the end result of our analysis. But how it starts? It starts on this platform. That is our studio interface. So here basically I'm having this interface where I'll do all the programming stuff. Programming I've already done. I'll just do the click so that you can understand the outputs in the better way. Don't need to worry about the programming part. I mean, that is out of the scope of this webinar because it will take longer time. Fine. So I'm just running through the things. Wherever you find you need to ask a question, you can ask. You are free to do that. Fine. So this is where actually our studio, have this Arc Markdown interface where you can have your title, then you have your date and what kind of output you want. So I just want an HTML document, so that is there, and I can place the very nice images of something which can be attractive in the documentation. So just clicking on the things and moving on. Now let me get your attention here. For all the programmings, you have certain functionality which you need. So these functionalities are available in the library of the software. So in this analysis, we are going to use these many utilities or these many functionalities. So I'm just quickly running through and loading all these libraries into this system. Now our workspace is enabled with these libraries. So whatever functionality will come, these will support. Now, what data we are going to have? Now the second step was data, collection. So we already have data, and this data is open source, that is available on the internet. If you want to search it with empty cars, you will find the data. So I'm just quickly going through what this data contains. The first variable is miles per gallon, that is the mileage of the car. Then number of cylinders a car has. Then what is the displacement of piston in the engine in cubic inches. So cubic inches means it is a volume basically. So it is cubic inches. Then horsepower, measured in gross horsepower. Then DRAT, that is rear axle ratio. So it's kind of some suspension feature that decide about suspension of the car. Then weight of the car. What is the weight in pounds? Then Cusack. Cusack is 1/4 mile time. That is another suspension feature which is used to evaluate the cars. Then you have this VS engine. So VS engine means whether the engine is V-shaped or straight. You might have heard of V-shaped engine where engines are actually on the angle to each other, and in the straight they are aligned on 180 degree to each other. Fine. So what kind of engine that car has, and then what is the status of automatic transmission? If it has a value 0, that means the car is automatic, and if it has a value 1, that means it is manual. Then how many gears it has, that is there, and then how many carburetors that car contains. So that is there. Now if you want to see how the data looks like, so let me just show you the data. It's so much loaded right now, so it may sometimes it takes time because our studio actually uses RAM. So once RAM is occupied, so that times it takes a bit of time, but once it starts, it will really do this very quickly. Fine. So let me just wait for the processing. Meanwhile, I can tell you about how the data looks like, and what are the different columns and row names in the data set. Let's just wait for a minute. I think this will be done, and then we can start. You have two different types of tools, Python, and you have RStudio. So there is one peculiar issue about RStudio is that it uses RAM, but in Python you have many options where you can use out of the RAM architectures, like you can use cloud space through Jupyter notebooks. So there you can sometimes have the things very quickly done. Fine. So, but there is very beautiful thing about R is that everything gets compiled together. So you don't need any third-party softwares to increase the capability of your data science profile. Fine. So let's say deployment of the web applications. So it doesn't do. I mean, in Python, you need to take other third-party softwares into consideration, but in R comes out with compact functionality. So let me just refresh it. Just a minute. Okay, let me go through this first. Meanwhile, that is coming up. So these are the libraries which we installed to get the functionalities done. Now, these are the this is the summary of our data. That means miles per gallon. You have a car with minimum 10.5 miles per gallon, and you have maximum mileage of the car 30.9, and then you have a mean and median value, and the first quartile and third quartile value. Fine. Similarly, for the cylinders, the car you have with minimum cylinder is 4, and then what maximum number of cylinder is 8. So displacement again 71 cubic inches and maximum 472. Fine. For horsepower, you have minimum car with minimum horsepower with 52 and maximum horsepower with 335. So similarly, you can see for weight of the car that it is 1.5 pound, and then it is 5.4 pound. So you can in summary you can see all the data. Now these are the variables and these are the cars basically. So these all are the cars which are having all those features, this carburetor and this miles per gallon, cylinder and everything together. So this is how the data in the rows you have and in the columns you have this way. Fine. Now what we are having as a data preparation step here, this data is very simple. You don't need much data preparation needed. I just want to convert these cylinder variable, VS, automatic transmission, gear into the factor variable. So factor variable is different from numeric variable. So numeric variable is what? Basically you have a numerical scale from, let's say, ranging from 1 to 10. So it may have 1.5, 2.5, 3.75, 8.95. So any value between 1 and 10. But factor, when I tell it as a factor, that means it creates levels in the data. That means if you have a data from 1 to 10, it will create one set of data which is having level 1, then level 2, then level 3 and level 4. So likewise, I am just trying to create here with this command data into factor levels only. And then I wanted to check whether data is having a missing value or not. In real world, when you will encounter data science jobs, you will always find missing value in the data. But here, fortunately, in this data, we don't have any missing value in any of the variable. Like in MPG, you don't have, in cylinders, you don't have, in carburetors, you don't have. So on data is complete and there is no missing value into it. Fine. So I think it's almost done. Yeah. So let me just, yeah. Hypothesis, that is, there is no significant difference in group means at significant level 0.05. So क्या है यहाँ पे दो ग्रुप्स, हमारे पास दो तरह की कार्स है यहाँ पे. One is which is having manual transmission and another is the group of cars which are having automatic transmission. So we want to see whether automatic transmission or this manual transmission, is there any difference in mileage of both type of cars. So we just want to look at, so simply I am just indicating that how we take this decision, that when this p value is less than 0.05, we consider that okay, there is a difference in two group means. So one mean is cars which are having automatic transmission, and their mean is, that is miles per gallon. Another set of car is manual transmission and their mileage per gallon mean we are having. So we can see here these are the means of these two cars. So this 0 is automatic transmission, and this group 1 is actually of the cars which are having manual transmission. So you can obviously see that manual transmission cars are having higher mileage, higher miles per gallon performance than the automatic transmission, and that is what you might be having experience. अगर आप लोगों ने automatic transmission की cars ली हो तो जनरली उनकी परफॉर्मेंस जो है, माइलेज की परफॉर्मेंस जो है वो आपकी मैनुअल ट्रांसमिशन कार से कम होती है. तो यही स्टेटमेंट, यही फैक्ट यहाँ पर एस्टेब्लिश हो रहा है. इसी तरह से हम उस इंजन के अलाइनमेंट पे भी ग्रुप्स को चेक कर सकते हैं कि whether the group of cars which are having V8 engine, V-shaped engine or straight engine, what is the difference in their mileage? So we can again see that there is a difference in the mileage of the car. So the third question of your business problem is here sorted out. Ki automatic transmission and manual transmission, there is a difference in mileage. So that is, we can see, you can tell your management that yeah, there is a difference. And what is the difference? That the manual transmission cars are having higher mileage than the automatic transmission cars. So this is your first business problem outlook we have sorted out. Fine. Now we want to understand what is the relationship of miles per gallon with other variables. Like here we are trying to do the relationship between horsepower and miles per gallon. So here, if you increase the horsepower of the car, miles per gallon, the mileage of the car decreases. Fine. So there is an inverse relationship between horsepower and miles per gallon. So that is evident, because if you want to have more power from the engine, definitely you are going to compromise on miles per gallon, that is mileage of the car. Fine. So this is evident. So you can create these graphics to convince your management committee that okay, these are my findings. Again, here we are having certain finding with miles per gallon versus displacement of engine. So you have the displacement of engine in cubic inch. So more displacement in the engine, there you have a less miles per gallon as a mileage of the car. Fine. Now here in this plot we have actually plotted 4 variables at a time. But in general, what you find, mostly you find that your car is actually your graph is actually having only 2 variables. But here in R you have ability to plot 4 or 5 or 6 variables. So here, like this cylinders, number of cylinders we are having in different shapes. Like this round point is having the car with 4 cylinders, then triangle is having 6, then this square is having 8 cylinder car. So that is there visible here in the graph, that you have here this triangle. So here this is a 6 cylinder car. Fine. Similarly for automatic and manual transmission, we have given the coloring. So all the red points are actually automatic transmission cars data, and this blue is actually all the manual transmission cars. Fine. So this is one way. Then again we can draw the relationship. So that is actually plotting the linear equation. So this is a regression line which we are plotting with some confidence interval. So this confidence interval means you have certain upper level of your regression line and lower line in between. Almost all most of the variance of the relationship of miles per gallon versus cubic inch displacement relationship is being explained. So that actually gives you predictive power. What predictive power? Let's say you your some of the prediction is okay, we will build up a 300 cubic inch engine in the car. So what will be the mileage? So there is one way that you build the engine and then you can really run the car on the roads and then get to know what is the mileage of the car. But here, if you cut through this point and then again you go onto the y-axis, you get an approximate idea that this car, which is going to be 300 displacement, will have at around 18 to 20 mileage, miles per gallon mileage. So that is, without building up that engine, without setting the car on the road, you actually get to know the estimate of what is going to be its mileage. So that is the advantage, to the research team. So research team or idea can be come out, it can be any wild idea to build a car. But what happens when it comes on the road? You see the mileage is low. So you can already predict and can say that this car is not going to be good for the Indian market, because this miles per gallon is not acceptable, whatever car segment we are going to cater. So that is, you can estimate prior. So this is one more way, that is a non-linear way. So sometimes linear relationship doesn't work, so then you have a non-linear relationship estimations. So here also you can do same thing, like if you want to build up a 200 displacement engine, so it will be approximately this much of mileage. Fine. So this is how you can pre-estimate the features of the engine or other elements of the car. Now, this is one more way, that if you want to have a car in automatic transmission or manual transmission both, so you can build different regression estimations for both in the R. And then let's say if you are you propose, okay, we want to have a 200 cubic displacement engine. So what is going to be the mileage if the car is manual transmission? So the manual transmission car will be having mileage like here. Fine. But if you have the same car in automatic transmission, so it will be having mileage less than 20. So that is, you can pre-estimate. So similarly, you can also find the non-linear patterns. If you believe that relationship is not linear, so you can rely on non-linear relationship. So I'm just telling the capacity of R, that how it is able to do sometimes analysis is really very filled with a lot of variables at one graph. Now this is a graph which is animation graph. I'm showing you that if you want to see that, okay, you have the displacement here on x-axis and mileage per gallon here. Fine. Now you want to see that if we increase the number of carburetors in the car, what is going to be the competitions among the car, and what is going to be the relationship between miles per gallon and displacement. So let's say if you have a car, you have only two carburetors. So you have these many cars, and you can see the name of these cars which is there in this competitive segment. Fine. So these are the cars which are having high mileage. So you can have one cluster of car here. Then here you have another cluster of cars which are there. So you can see what competitive era. So if you want to enter into a very no competition zone, you can really tell the management, okay, we have this particular space where there is no competition of cars. Fine. So if we can launch a car with two carburetors and with 200 displacement, 200 cubic inch displacement, probably we are going to have mileage of 22, and we will be having no competition because there is no player here. If you want to see all these variations across number of carburetors, you just have a play around and you will see the points are changing their positions. So that's where you can animate your graph. This is one more variation I'm telling you here, that is more it keeps staying intermittently, and it will tell you, see, it does and then stops, it does it and then it stops. So that's why, like here you can see 8 carburetor, you have only Maserati Bora, only one competitor in this segment. Fine. For 6, you have only one. So here these are the segments where you have least competition. Fine. So this is one more way. And 3D plot is actually not available. It is available on the ARC architecture only. So let me relaunch it so that I can show you this one. Just a minute. Let me open the R Studio. Fine. So let's continue with this, and then we will see. Yeah. Now, among the different variables of the cars, what is the relationship? So we can put all the variables together into the core plot. So here we are seeing a core plot where we can see relationship between miles per gallon and weight of the car. That is, it is inversely proportional. Now, if we see automatic transmission versus miles per gallon, so if it has a value, uh, this way or that way, so you have increase and decrease in the mileage. So all the variables are put together here in the core plot, so you can understand the relationship among the variables very well. Fine. So that's one way we can do. Now I have built up a model here that is a linear model. That is, if you know about your mathematical classes, that is mx plus c. Fine. So that is means you actually have an independent variable x, and then you want to estimate y with the help of an appropriate coefficient and some intercept, that is the gap between the start of the graph and the zero value on y-axis, and then some certain error, which I have told you that no model will have zero error. So the error component will always be there. So here what we are trying to build the relationship between miles per gallon with the variables. So these variables, like you have all these variables, and with them what is the relationship of miles per gallon. Let's say for cylinder you have this relationship, which is the engine which is having six cylinders. For horsepower you again have a negative relation. For DRAT you have a positive relation. Fine. For your automatic transmission you may have a value 1 that has impact of 1.21 on the miles per gallon. So similarly for gears, like if a car is having carburetor 8, it has a 7.25 here. That means positively it is contributing towards increasing the mileage of the car. Fine. So we can evaluate the models based on certain criteria, that is R square. If model is having the R square value more than 0.9, I'm having it a bit technical, but just to get you the right thing where we want to focus. Fine. If model is good, how we can evaluate? We can evaluate through the R square value. If it is more than 0.9, then model is very good, very acceptable. Fine. Its range is basically between 1 to between 0 to 1. So that is pretty high, but we need more improvement in this model so that we get 0.9 and above R square value. So these are the different models which we built up. Now how to improve the model? So we have one way of doing it is stepwise regression. So I'm just not going you through all these steps here, but just tell you the outcome of this. We can see here the model R square value has increased to 0.84. So that is an improvement in the model performance. And we can see here, the number of variables have also reduced. Now what this means? This model is better than the first model we have done. In first model it has taken all the variables, but now it has only 4 variables. So this means this model is better, smarter than the first one, because it contains less error and it is giving more accuracy, and that is reflected by R square. Fine. So now I just straightway want to jump onto the R business problem. So first problem is, which car segment is most competitive? Now we will be using clustering algorithm, that is most popular and unsupervised machine learning algorithm, and I will tell you the visualization which we obtain from that algorithm, not the exact, fine, not the, exact how algorithm works, because that is mathematically intensive thing. Fine, sorry. Fine. So what we are doing in clustering, basically, we are doing the segmentation of the cars. Segmentation of the cars means you are grouping the cars based on their, variable values. So there are many algorithms. So we are actually, using this complete linkage algorithm and Euclidean distance. So don't need to delve into this. Just need to understand how the cluster are made in the algorithm. I'm not, doing it manually. When I run this clustering algorithm, you see these, red squares, red rectangles across the name. So this is a dendrogram basically, and it categorizes the cars into the groups. So it has done it automatically. So these cars, these many cars are actually forming one group. These 4 cars are forming one group. These 6-7 cars are having more consistent variable values, and then here again, so we have 1 2 3 4 5 segments of the car market here. So now can you tell me which is most competitive? Of course, this is most competitive because this has highest number of cars in this particular segment. Fine. And which is least competitive? So I don't say that this is least competitive because it is the only player. So we cannot say there is a competition, but here we have only 4 cars, which is least competitive. So your first 2 business problems are sorted out now. Which car segment is most competitive and which car segment is least competitive? So these 2 things are created here, and we know if we want to launch car in this segment, we should be ready for fierce competition. And if we want to have a least amount of competition here, we can choose this particular segment where these 4 cars are there. So the comparatively, it has a least number of competitors. Now you can arrange this graph, this dendrograph, in a many ways to make it more appealing for your presentation. Fine. So this is one way you can segment the cars. This is one more way, and I will tell you which is my favorite one. That it tells me very beautiful cluster of the cars. Like these are the cars which are clustered together. Fine. These are the 3 cars which are clustered together. These are the cars which are clustered. So I can clearly see the composition of a particular car segment. So this is created by RStudio clustering algorithm. This is one more way. We can see all your competitor organized in a beautiful circular dendrogram. And if you want to have different set of colors, now you can very visibly see different segments of the cars. Like these cars are having same segment, these cars are having same segment, and these cars are having same segment. And this Maserati Bora is a unique car which is having no competition and no segment at all. Fine, it's a completely new segment. So this is how you can. Now there is one question that we want to know: the sports cars. Which are the sports car which we want to have? What kind of a sports car we want to have? So let's see. I'm just skipping these 4 things because it will stretch our session. Now, when I surveyed on Google that what is the average displacement of sports car, so I found that cars which are having a piston displacement more than 110 cubic inch are the cars which are sports car, and cars which are having more than 4 cylinders, and car which are having more than 180 horsepower, gross horsepower. So I can just pass on these criteria, and I can filter out the cars which are there in my sports car segment. Fine. So just feature summary of the cars. I mean, you have this summary of the cars, which are kind of a feature you are having as a mileage, as a what we can say. Now let me just go through the last thing which we want to understand for the sports car. Yeah, let me just run this command. Fine, it's done. Could not find, so let me just give it a library. Okay, I need to first. We'll just take 5 more minutes just to understand how the things work in RStudio for the last question. Yeah, all libraries are loaded. Fine. And I was telling you about the data set. The data set looks like this, that you have all these names of the car, and then you have all the attributes, and all the cell values are there in the data set. Now let's come down to the our sports car problem there. So let me come out. Yeah. So all libraries are available, so I can just quickly go through all this. And fine, that's the thing we obtained, and this is, we already had it. And so these are the programming stuff actually. Fine, so let me just run this one. Okay, so probably yeah, okay, here we have it. Fine, so let's move on to our sports car segment, right? So here we want to have those cars. So these are the cars basically which are sports segment cars. So we have these all around 10 or 11 cars which are sports segment cars. So if you want to launch car in this segment, you have to understand their attributes: miles per gallon, cylinder, displacement, horsepower, and all this. So you have the idea that how the sports car segment is going to be. Now the last question, I have just not done it deliberately. That what was that question? The question was, yeah, the in premium segment cars, which cars are the nearest competitors? Fine. So why I have left it deliberately unsolved? Because sometimes management throw a problem to you, but you cannot promise them to get it solved, because for data science you needed data. Fine. So for premium car segments, really what is defining for the premium car segment? The price of the car. Price of the car makes it premium, and then of course features or rich features, luxury features follow the thing. So until unless you don't have price data of those cars, and for premium segment cars, you have a variety of customizations involved into it. So really you cannot narrow down on a particular price feature. Fine. So you, and another thing with the premium segment car, that you will be having very less number of cars in the premium segment, or let's say super luxury segment. So there you will not have sufficient data. So here sometimes to the management you have to tell that as the data is not available, so we cannot approach this solution through data science, but through other means of methods, other means or other methods. Fine. So that's how you can solve the problem of launching a new car. Fine. Ravi, I think I have taken a lot of time. Now let's jump onto the questions if somebody has it.
Oh, sure. So I will definitely invite the attendees to interact with you. And if they
Yeah,
have any question, comments, then feel free to connect. You
yeah.
can either post your questions through chat box or you can unmute yourself and directly have a conversation with the speaker.
Hi, this is Hima.
Yeah.
It was a great session, but I have like a very generic question. So,
Yes, please.
when you want to get a strategy or like a insight,
Yeah.
like for example, I'm working on a mobile application and I want to get insight in future.
Yeah.
So, isn't that we have to put a lot of thought process actually to log the right events? Like is it it's like two-way, right? So I'm trying to understand,
Yeah.
um is it only after based on whatever data we have is the strategy that we get? I'm not someone who is like interested to
Yeah.
learning the data science technically, but want to understand how we can use it in business, decisions or insights.
See, there are two ways to do this. One is that if the problem which you are having, yeah, designing your mobile application or launching, what problems you have, there might be some case studies already done on that. So you can have the data as a proxy to your business problem. Fine, and then derive a solution through data science tools and get insight out of it, like what pages you must have in your domain where you want to launch mobile application, so that you get custom mobile user engagement. Fine, then how the quality of content should be there, how the image planting of in between the articles you should have. Fine, so there is very beautiful data set available on the internet already about that, but it is directly not to the mobile application, but for any kind of online content publication or online functionality, you can use that. That is online Google data set, something. I'll share the link with Ravi if you want to, if you are interested in that. This is one. Secondly, if you, let's say you don't have any data prior to that, so then you have to start collection of data. So whichever domain you want to launch your application, you might be having already many players working in that domain, or maybe not near competitor, but some sort of nears you can derive. Like, let's say if you want to launch a fitness app, fine, and let's assume that there is no competition for fitness app, but you may have a mobile applications on Google Play Store which are selling fitness products. So you can take the data of those mobile applications and use it for data, derive the insight from data science tools. Now, what things you can derive from those data? How many downloads it has, fine, and what is the introductory page of that mobile application is, fine. Then thirdly, does it ask for the some free subscription, or directly ask for the paid subscription? What is the registration formality level? Is it complex or is it simple? I mean, in the mobile application, you must be knowing that if you have a difficult step, person drops the installation of the mobile app and delete it. So how easy it is to do it? So on that basis, you collect the data and then you finally derive what are the features your mobile app should have, so that it get least resistant from your downloaders or your visitors or whosoever is your target market. So these are the two ways through which you can have it applied on your problem.
Yeah, got it. That helps. Um, one more thing, like when every time we talk about like machine learning or data science,
Yeah,
I mean every time I try to Google, so explains how you could become a data scientist. But for
yeah.
someone who is just imagine a product owner or someone who wants to understand just how you can use it but doesn't want to know the nuances, is there like a specific guideline or is there a specific place where we can go and understand this is the best practice, or this is the way that you can understand how your data can resolve the solution, or or give you insights? Is there anything like that, or a role,
See,
or a
see,
term for it? Yeah.
see. Let's say there are three candidates who all go through the same course curriculum of data
Okay.
science. Fine. One is the guy who wants to be a developer. Fine.
Right.
So he will be interested in understanding the algorithms and understanding the data and getting the output and all these things which we have done just now. This is a developer's work.
Yeah.
Second is a person who does not want to do this because this is the everyday job for a developer, but he wants to do research on this, that whether I can improve this particular algorithm to get better results. So this is data science or machine learning researcher job. Fine. The third one is that he's a business owner, or let's say functional head. He wants to apply data science, but he don't want to be a developer. If he becomes a developer, he will not be able to function as a head, and he cannot really develop the things because he doesn't have time. His main job is decision making. Fine.
Right.
So to understand those nuances of data science, to understand if somebody doesn't get him on the wrong way or the things are not in the right order, he should know the overview of data science. Fine.
Right.
So he may not go for that intensive work, course curriculum, which charges for 4 lakh or 5 lakh or something, but you go for introductory, that is to
Okay.
get an overview of data science, so that nobody fools you.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. So developers are having habit of befooling their heads if they get to know that he doesn't understand. So that's way it would help if you get an overview of data science. A bit of practice also you need to do, so that you understand what output reports are coming to you. You can analyze it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Are there any other questions coming from the audience? Okay, all right, Arun. Seems there are no further question coming, so let me take up the session towards the wrap-up side. So I should thank you that you took time to showcase a case study here, how data science can be applied to make better decisions. Thank you so much for that. And thanks must be extended to all the participants who took time and joined the session. So on a closing note, we would be uploading the recording of this particular session towards the end of this week, and a link would be shared with each one of you who either registered or joined the session. So with that note, let me say bye for now. Good night to you. And there are 3 more sessions coming up in the business agility series. I hope you would make a note to join them as well. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank
Take
you, Ravi,
care,
and all
see you again.
participants. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.